when you use this, don't hold it down here because it blocks the signal. Hold it like anywhere up, okay? Yeah, hold it 3 seconds. Hold it for 3 seconds. Sorry to interrupt. When you get this in your hand, you need to hold it in the middle. Don't hold it down here. Okay. It'll block the sound.
Okay. We don't need to turn it on.
It should be on.
Okay. Yeah, it's on. Thank you.
All right, Margaret, can you hear me? There's sound. I suppose I'll let, nah, I don't need that. That looks silly, right? All right, Ryan, do you hear me? All right, if everyone could take their seats, please. Welcome to another event at the House of Sustainable Agriculture of the Americas. We're moving from biotechnology and all the benefits and innovation in biotechnology to kind of its broader scope, which is the bioeconomy. And the bioeconomy is very interesting. It's something that we at IECA have developed our own program on. Biotechnology is part of that program. But the real question is, how do we transition from a fossil fuels-based economy into a bioeconomy? We've talked already about biofuels, and we had an excellent panel a day ago or 2 days ago or 3 days ago on biofuels, but I think we're going to talk about that and some other elements of the bioeconomy today. How do we transition from that fossil fuels-based economy into a bioeconomy? And so we're delighted to have Ernie Shea from Solutions from the Land kick us off with 2 sets of panels. So Ernie, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Lloyd, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending upon where you are in the world. This event is being recorded, so we'll be sharing it widely when we get through today. As Lloyd said, I'm your moderator today. I'm Ernie Shea. I have the good fortune of working for a group of very visionary group of farmers, scientists that together are thinking about a new vision for what agriculture is all about. It's not just a sector that produces commodities. It's a sector that concurrently delivers quality of life. We filter and store water, we sequester carbon, we enhance biodiversity, we solve the climate crisis, contribute solutions. So we're many things, and the challenge, I think, is how do we manage these in an integrated way to deliver the multiple outcomes? Before we get into our program today, I want to start just by thanking our co-organizers. IECA and Food Tank teamed up with SFL to put this on. So this truly is an example of cross-boundary collaboration of different groups that have a shared vision of the future. And our co-sponsors made this possible, and they include the Circular Bioeconomy Systems Institute, Syngenta Crop Science, the Farm Journal Foundation, the Plant-Based Products Council, the U.S. Soybean Export Council, and BIO. So we were fortunate to be able to recruit a nice, diverse cross-section of partners that have an interest in this. So we're talking about the bioeconomy over the next 90 minutes, but it's not just about the bioeconomy. I call it the bioeconomy done right. And that really is going to require us from transitioning from a linear approach to a bioeconomy where we take, make, and dispose and move on, to one where we obviously make things, we grow commodities, but along the way we reuse, we recycle, we retain value, we reduce the need for purchased inputs. We hopefully are retaining more value at the farm level. And that's what circularity is all about, and that's what we're going to be focusing on here over these several presentations. So our program for today has me moderating. We are going to begin with a pre-recorded keynote message, and then we have a farmer panel or a farmer-oriented stakeholder panel, followed by a value chain panel that will be working with us. And I think what I'm going to do to save a few minutes in time is simply just do quick introductions of panel one, and then I'm going to come sit down and be ready to hopefully fire questions at this group. Our keynote speaker today in the pre-recorded message is David Jones. David is the Dean of the College of Engineering at Utah State University, but he's also the newly elected chair of the Circular Bioeconomy Systems Institute. This is a brand new institute that was created after several years of work involving a variety of disciplines and value chain partners that stood up a center of excellence for the circular bioeconomy. So David's going to be delivering our introductory message. We then are going to turn to our panel, and we're very fortunate to have James Gluck with us. James is the Executive Director of the Plant-Based Products Council, and he leads the organization's advocacy for a shift towards a more circular bioeconomy through greater adoption of renewable plant-based materials. So James, thank you for being with us. We then go to Tamara Spilvogel. Tamara directs BIO's climate policy work. She has a long history of experience working in policy arenas, helping associations develop the policy platforms that are needed to achieve their goals. So Tamara, thank you so much for being with us. And then we turn to what I think is kind of the beating heart of agriculture, and that's our farmers. So next up we have Gene Stoll. Gene is a corn and soybean farmer from the Lake Wilson, Minnesota area. He is a longtime director on the, let me get this right, Gene, on the American Soybean Association, I think, and the Minnesota Research and Promotion Council. He's been very active as a soybean leader in multiple organizations, but he's here today really wearing the hat of a farmer. And last but not least is Lois Wright Morton. Lois is a seventh-generation farmer from Northeast Ohio. She's considered herself a smallholder. We don't think of her that way, but she does. She's a small-scale, diversified farmer who grows specialty crops, primarily blueberries and raspberries, but she dabbles in other things as well that she'll tell us about. And Lois is also my boss, so I have to be extra careful when I ask Lois your hardest question of your life later today. So with that, that's our panel for the first probably 40 minutes. We're going to then do a quick switch, and our second panel is going to come up, and we have an opportunity to turn to our value chain partners that are going to be sharing their thoughts and insights on the circular bioeconomy. So with no further ado, I think we're ready to hear from David Jones, who's got an opening message to help provide context for what this is all about.
Pleased to join this conversation about the circular bioeconomy for a climate secure planet. My name is David Jones. I'm Dean of the College of Engineering at Utah State University, and I'm also the chair of the Circular Bioeconomy Systems Institute. There's three things I want to accomplish as you begin your conversation about a climate secure planet. The first is to tell you a little bit about CBSI and invite you to join our efforts. The second is to remind us of the CBS principles. And I want to talk about next steps as you engage in your conversation. CBSI is part of and was started from the American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers. ASABE was founded in 1907. We have over 7,000 members across 100 countries. Our mission is to promote engineering in food, water, energy, fiber, and the environment. You will join us in our vision of a world where all have the food, water, energy, fiber, and safe environment needed to thrive. CBSI is organized to create a multidisciplinary culture that adopts the principles of circularity and aspires to become a premier catalyst for systems-level innovations to transition toward a more sustainable circular system. When you look at our vision, mission, and purpose, you will see that we are motivated as you to provide a healthy planet. And that healthy planet is going to be driven by a vibrant, sustainable, circular bioeconomy system, producing plentiful food, feed, forest products, and renewable resources. We want to advance education, professional development, and innovation for developing sustainable circular bioeconomy systems. One of the things that's important when we talk about the principles of circularity is to remind us of what we all know. These are modified from the MacArthur Foundation, but include increasing use efficiency and designing out the waste and pollution from our systems, and the motivation to keep products and materials in use. We also want to regenerate our natural systems, be that water systems, soils, land, air, and the broader ecosystem. But last but not least, we also have to do this in the context of providing economic benefit for all of those in the value chain. As we think about a circular biosystem, it must be about reducing, recycling, and reusing waste in a productive way. We must be about optimizing our production systems, and we must be about displacing fossil fuels with renewable energies. An example of this transition from a linear to a circular system is provided by our colleagues working in a food system. What you notice in this is that the traditional linear system is transitioned and transformed into a circular system. What I would highlight for us is that the traditional linear system, as you will notice, is composed of farming, food production, and then the distribution and consumption. And you could add granularity there. But that linear system, as I say, is transformed into a circular system where each of those subparts is maintained and conserved. But what happens is that the output of one subsystem is the input to the next subsystem. Along the way, we are preventing waste. We are rescuing products from the waste stream. We're valorizing those waste products. And the net benefit is that we have co-benefits, either from an energy perspective, from a financial perspective, an economic perspective, a nutrition perspective. But the benefits that accrue to everyone in that supply chain, and that all benefit from transitioning from a linear system to a circular system. CBS enters this conversation in a variety of ways. One of the things that we attempted to do was to try to answer this reasonable and rational question about what are the barriers to circularity and what are the opportunities for circularity. And we did that in the context of a variety of subsystems. The food system I already mentioned, animal production, farming systems, urban ag systems, and more. What we concluded at a high level was that there were several things that we needed to accomplish. One is that we needed to really invest in transformational initiatives. And what that drives us to is that organization and individuals must collaborate and participate in transforming our systems. And those transformations, as it says there, are going to be across the supply and value chain, but also include technology development and deployment. It includes new science, new biotech, but it's also implementing what we already know in a way that can be productive and making the system more circular. We have a lot of work to do in that area, and we need your help. And getting your help and getting more hands on deck is this idea of network development. We need to be better connected with each other. We need to be connected across disciplines, engaging stakeholders, and different professions and practitioners. This, I can say, is the idea that the problems that we are trying to solve transcend any particular discipline, transcend any particular profession, and we must all come together to provide viable solutions. What that challenge then is number three, our cultural norms. We must be in a position to adopt and adapt the norms that are consistent with our principles and shared values. Some of those principles and shared values are I've talked about and are shown here. But we must recognize that circular systems are complex. They're actually systems of systems. And we must be willing to embrace that complexity. It's not easy, but it's necessary. And in that embracing that complexity, we must avoid reductionism. As we reduce the system further and further, we begin to erode the true nature of the system. So we have to avoid that temptation of reductionism. We must embrace that transdisciplinary research and bring all to the table. Included in bringing to the table are the stakeholders. Bring the stakeholders and make them the center of the solution. When we look at all of the advances towards circularity, particularly at a bioeconomy, a circular system, we must include the human stakeholders, the policymakers, the standards organizations, the disciplines, the professions. All must be at the table. When we look at this big picture of transitioning from linear to circular systems, it's going to require a transition not of just technology and policy, but of mindset in how we educate our students, how we educate ourselves, and how we experience that transition for ourselves and others. The list that I've shown here is some of the challenges that we have as we try to transition from a linear system to a circular system. I'll highlight when we see the system as a making a decision between promoting or the sacrificing the ecology or sacrificing our commerce. I would challenge us that perhaps we have not framed the problem correctly. We must find solutions where the ecology and the commerce are able to thrive. We have a lot to do, and I'm so thrilled that you are engaged in a conversation about how to advance the circular bioeconomy for a climate secure planet. Thank you for what you're doing.
So David, thank you very much for sharing those remarks with us. You packed a lot into a very short period of time. And I think I was struck by his last slide where he compared and contrasted the linear approach to farming to a circular approach. And he emphasized how we're dealing with systems of systems. It's not just complicated, it's complex. It's going to require transformational change. So these are all, I guess, elements of agriculture. It's evolved over the eons, continuous improvement, but yet now we have another frontier to cross. So, James, let me start with you. You work with farmers every day. What are some of the reasons that farmers and foresters, aquaculture producers, whoever is the feedstock producers, why might they be willing to try this circular bioeconomy approach to managing their enterprise?
It's a great question, and I think that there are kind of three ways to look at this. One, from kind of a national security perspective, as we look at our country, every president since 2001 has identified bioproducts, biomanufacturing as something that's important. This idea of resiliency across supply chains. I think from an environmental perspective, looking at soil health, especially with compostable products, having the ability to improve the productivity of our soil. There's a water impact here, less litter. And of course the greenhouse gas benefit. But I think the biggest argument to a grower is from an economic perspective. It's good business when you're selling a crop. It's another demand stream. I think the USDA estimates that there's the industry as a whole, the bio-based products industry, is a $489 billion industry in the U.S. each year, and that's about 4 million jobs that come with that. So I think the economic argument is great on the farm, and it's great downstream and through that entire circular economy as well.
So that really is a powerful motivator for a producer to change, the ability to make a better profit so they can stay in business for current operations and for future generations. As you've worked with farmers in this space, they may kind of struggle to get the words circular bioeconomy systems out. But what's the vernacular, what's the language that they use when they describe how they're operating in a more holistic, integrated way? Is it more like they used to operate when there were more integrated livestock cropping systems around? How do they describe it?
I was going to say, I struggle to get those words out of my mouth on a regular basis as well. But I think, the verbiage matters, but I think it's important to think, many folks, you look back a generation or two or three, when it wasn't just, a single demand flow that folks were looking at, but how that the systems interact together. We use, different language today, but from a grower's perspective, these aren't necessarily new and novel concepts. I don't really know a grower out there that's looking to kind of create waste or leave the land in a state that's not as good as when they found it, if not even better.
Very good. Thank you so much, James. Tamara, you spent a lot of time working on policy matters. You live and work in Washington, so at least from a federal perspective, you deal with people that are just trying to push policy buttons all the time. If we just do this and require this, the outcome will be here. And I wish it were that simple, but obviously it's not. And as we think about transitioning away from these silo management approaches to farming or the linear approach and move to more circular, what are some of the enabling policies that are going to really be needed to move us and break the paradigm and allow greater flexibility for farmers? Any thoughts there?
Thanks for the question, Ernie. I think one of the things to say is that with regards to the different types of policies that are going to come into play, they're going to affect different pieces of the puzzle, because obviously there's the incentives for bio-based products procurement that are already in place that can be improved upon, but there's also better funding for the research into this area, better funding into some of the efforts to do outreach and education, because I think there's a lot going on that people don't realize is impacted by the circular bioeconomy, and therefore we're bringing it home to what it means for them on a day-to-day basis in terms of the products, the materials, and also the ability to do the solutions we're looking to do. One of the things we talk about here is the emissions reductions conversation, but to be able to get those solutions for climate change, for food security, for all of these other globally set, societally set goals, we need biotechnology and the bioeconomy to come to the table and help meet those goals, because at each step of the process, to be able to do the things with where we're producing on less land, where we're using less resources, we're accomplishing the emissions reductions, all of that's going to require the toolkits that policy needs to enable in terms of making sure that every tool in the toolkit is available both now and in the future.
So your member companies are embracing the bioeconomy because they're key stakeholders in it. They're producing products that are enabling it to really evolve and bloom and grow. Is there any hesitation or concern, though, at the same time within the partners, the members of bio and the life science, the companies that are delivering these solutions, that somehow the concept of circularity is going to be translated into reduced use of things? This emphasis on reusing, recycling, making greater use of on-farm assets that could be substituted for purchase inputs. Is there any concern there that there might be a different side of this that people haven't thought through, that perhaps this could be adopted as a new standard that would force people to rely less? Or do you think the value and the products of your member companies are going to be so valuable that the push to perhaps use less by some can be overcome by demonstrating the outcomes we can produce?
That's a very interesting question. I would say I wouldn't say that there's a concern, because in a lot of ways you can say that circularity is almost built into the DNA of farming, because the farm economy is always looking for ways to use waste or co-products in a way that's going to bring additional value to the table. And we see that a lot with our member companies as well, because they're bringing to the table different technologies that allow for additional ways to capture and help decarbonize through new and innovative methods, whether it's industrial fermentation and how that is bringing through opportunities to capture waste gas in a way that's not been done before, to be able to capture carbon from the air, to be able to capture carbon from agricultural waste. All of these things are definitely part and parcel for what our members are working on, and it's something that they bring to the table in terms of looking at things from a very systems-wide perspective as well, because what they are doing, whether it's from a bio-based feedstock perspective, whether it's from a bioprocessing perspective, or whether it's from a systems perspective, you're going to see them be coming to the table to be a part of this conversation, and they're going to make the most of those opportunities to look at ways to reduce, because you're also using those tools to reduce the carbon that's out there, and it's part of what they're working to do.
And because circularity is systems of systems and it's complex and complicated at the same time, it really does require innovation, requires technology. So it's nice to see that we're stepping up and not shying away from investments in technology and innovation, because there are other voices around the world that just wants us to go back in time and just farm in a certain way without relying on these types of important inputs. So it's great that we're not cowering but leading the way forward with these new tools.
Yeah, no, we're definitely looking at ways to bring more innovation to market, and some of those, how do we deal from a policy perspective with those regulatory barriers that are impeding our ability to bring them to market, and I think that's one of the key things that we're focused on.
So let's turn to our farmers, who really are on the front line of experimenting with different approaches to farming. You've been experimenting your entire career. We've been experimenting since millennium, whenever agriculture began. Gene, on your farm, as you've been challenged by many, many expectations, you're there to provide food and address food insecurity at home and around the world. You're being asked to enhance biodiversity. You're being asked to improve water quality. Now you're being asked to sequester carbon in the ground. I mean, there's so many things that people are trying to get you to do. So what does circular agricultural systems look like on your farm?
I would say that on our farm, the first thing we look at is the uses of new technologies. If we can measure it, we know how to handle it better. So some of the technologies we use is variable rate planting, variable rate fertilizer application, variable rating things to match up with the soils and the fertilities that are already there. We can add where we don't have those. We can add fertilizer where we don't have those in the soil, but we don't have to put as much in other places. When I look at my different soil types, certain soil types will produce more just because of their natural ability. If I can put more seeds per acre in that area, I can enhance the productivity of my whole farm if I'm not putting too much in some place and too little in others. So, and then the next part we look at the things that have come along with trying to sequester carbon and using technologies like no-till and strip-till and making sure that we're not disturbing that soil, we're keeping that carbon in place. It would be nice if there was more incentive for that, but we still want to do that because personally, I want to leave my soils, my farm in better shape for my next 2 generations that are coming to the farm, and hopefully they'll do the same for the generations following that.
And Gene, I should have looked more closely at your resume. I don't believe you currently have any livestock on your farm, but did you ever have livestock? And what are your thoughts about this opportunity to reintegrate livestock and cropping system operations?
I think it's very important that we integrate livestock. We're just going to do it in a different way than we did in the past. In the past, everybody had their small dairy, their small pork production on each farm. We've evolved to get some economies of scale where we've got larger dairies, we've got larger pork producers, we've got larger poultry producers. If I can produce the crops that they need to feed that livestock, and they can return some of the waste that they generate back to that farm, it just helps both of us.
And if you go the next level in the value chain and think about if you're a corn grower and you're selling corn or soybeans to a biorefinery, and the co-products that come off of those operations can also be returned back and makes that circular loop. And that's another, I think, dimension of circularity that we're just beginning to realize how much potential is there.
Well, if you would look at the dairy and beef economies, when you grow grow corn and it processed into biofuels and ethanol. The byproducts of that process comes back to those livestock producers, integrated into the feed source, and then again, once they're done with it, it can come back to the farm, and we can use those wastes.
And let's not forget that those integrated operations are also producing a high-value protein that's feeding a hungry world, a nutrient-deficient world. And the animals in these integrated cropping systems and a circular economy can provide all kinds of benefits, from soil carbon sequestration to all the way through to the protein that is harvested. So, Lois, over to you. As I mentioned during your introduction, you're one of the smallholder farmers. You describe yourself as that, producing fruits and vegetables for human consumption. What does circular systems look like on your farm?
Well, do we have slides or not?
We do. If we
okay.
could put, it's Lois has, I think, a slide deck there.
Yeah, when I ask the question, well, when we talk about circularity on farms and circular systems, we talk about like the brand new idea, and it's not a brand new idea, is it not?
No.
It's not a brand new idea. So when I think about, I have a specialty crop farm, and you'll see very shortly what that looks like. I ask, how does adopting circular systems help me, my farming operation, and my community? Because as a smallholder farmer, I'm very interested in my farming community, not just producing on large acres, but I'm thinking about the relationship that goes with that. And yeah, there you see kind of a picture of it. It's pretty diversified. My blueberries are under 3/4 of an acre of exclusion nut for my IPM. You see a little bit of manure that I use on some of my cropping systems. But when I think about a circular system, the first question I really ask is, what are the outputs that I'm going to do? What am I trying to accomplish? And if we move to the next slide, you'll see the diversity of things that I do. I think of myself as producing food and nutrition. I raise blueberries and red raspberries. Now, we all know that the market says they're the healthiest thing that you can possibly. So I don't have to convince my consumers about that. I service 2 farmers markets and have a farm stand and 2 two local grocery stores. The impact of those have been amazing to me, because I have had a 3rd local grocery store say, hey, everybody else has your blueberries. I think I would like to carry your blueberries. So it looks like next year, if I can figure out the logistics as a smallholder, I am a single, I'm my worker, I'm the owner, I have to do it all. I do have some laborers or some pickers in the month of July, because that's when the whole crop comes in. And that actually, for a specialty crop grower, is the real challenge when you think of circular systems. If we move to the next slide, you'll actually see that a little bit more about my circular system. And the thing to remember, that a circular system on a diversified farm means lots of things happening. It's very, very complex. And so you need feedback loops. You can't be every place at once. And I use some what I think of as very basic technology. I have a weather station in my blueberry field, and it has a remote monitor, so I'm in the house or wherever I'm at. I always know what the temperature, what the wind is, what the precipitation. I have soil moisture. That particularly helps me to know whether I have whether they're getting too dry. In the winter time, or as spring bloom comes in, I know whether I have to worry about a frost. So that's extraordinarily important. And so you're actually seeing, I have a website that if I'm someplace else like here, I can sort of tell over a 7-day period, what exactly has happened this past week and what do the trends look like. And then I have some other kinds of what I think of as low technologies. You're looking And the lower end, my IPM is for my red raspberries. I have a problem with the spotted-winged Drosophila as an invasive species. And you see that I had an exclusion net that covered those blueberries. Red raspberries are continuously pollinated, so it's an exclusion net means that I have added costs of purchasing pollinators to put inside. So some of the research shows that hummingbirds, if you put the, they'll eat about 60% of the larvae. That's not 100%, that's not perfect, but it gets me closer to what I'm looking for. So a circular economy, to me, or a circular system, has two components. First is the retained value. What's the value of all the things that I possibly have and my neighbors have? My brother is a neighbor. He has a much larger farm. He has the livestock. And so I'm always begging for manure and straw and whatever things that he'd like. And I'll give him all the blueberries and raspberries that he'd like. So I'm interested in the retained value. And then I'm very, very interested in the regenerated ecosystem value, because they go together, because that also becomes one of my inputs. And if we go to the next slide, this is my retained value, and what you'll see here is I have a solar panel for my fencing system that keeps the deer out of my blueberries. I have a small greenhouse that starts a lot of my cropping systems, and every time I have a larger greenhouse colleague come through my greenhouse, they say, well, you haven't mechanized things. And I said, yes, I have. I have a solar-powered vent opener, and at certain temperatures it opens. It's beeswax operated, and so it's just based on when it gets really hot, it opens my vents, and I have about 10 of those vents so I don't need electricity for them. You can see I have a rain barrel, and then you'll also see that I have a set of co-products, and my jams and jellies. Actually, I didn't start out to produce jams and jellies at all, but the whole thing about specialty crops are when they're ready, and then they're not fresh anymore. What do you do with them? You've spent all the money and all of the. And so one of the important things about circularity is that we find other ways to co-use our products. I'm running out of time, aren't I? Okay,
yes.
Next slide. Sorry. And this is my regenerated value. I have a river behind me. My out parcels are corn and soybeans. I have a wetland that runs that tile line through and cleans it. And I have a lot of biodiversity.
Lois, thank you very much. And because you're my boss, I gave you a little extra time.
I can see you gave me a lot of leeway.
But we're now cutting you off now.
I gotcha.
So we've had great examples of how circularity is being integrated across our 4 presentations here. Let's talk for a few minutes about needs. We don't have everything we need. So James, in your arena within the bioeconomy, this shift from a fossil economy to a bioeconomy, what are the needs, maybe beyond policy? What are the research, the innovation breakthroughs that are needed to really get us to the level that this has the potential to get us to?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ari. I think if you talk to anyone in the space, and sort of our membership crosses the value chain from growers all the way to branded product, manufacturers of all sizes, and so that needs list is pretty diverse. But I think one of those is support for the innovation infrastructure. And so whether that's, as you look at the U.S., when you're looking at biorefineries, we're really good at the laboratory level, but we're not as good. We don't have as much investment in sort of that pilot and demonstration scale that's needed to really grow the industry. And so I think investment in that space. As an example, I think in the U.S. we've got about 30 biorefineries that are in that pilot scale, and you look at places like Europe, they've got 300 nearly. So definitely an area where there's some need. I think beyond that, some commonality around terminology on labeling when you look at bioproducts, so that the consumers have a really good sense and it's very transparent across the value chain what we're talking about, and that will help defend against some of the risks of greenwashing or other claims that might be made. So I think those are probably two of the key needs that the industry could use.
And that latter point is one we've heard here at this COP and in previous COPs, that somehow the value chain is here just to exploit and take advantage of a crisis, so to continue to be viable and make money. And so there are claims of greenwashing, but it's refreshing to see how much energy and interest is really being applied to help farmers be successful. And I think that's a really key point. You're following and listening to the needs of farmers, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I think we also do a lot of consumer research because the demand here is market driven. I think everyone here has talked about the need is there, and it's there because consumers are asking for it. And so we ask those consumers every year, a whole list of questions. And the one that comes back year after year is that over 2/3 of consumers are buying some of the plant-based products, consumer products, because they tie back to the farm and they tie back to agriculture.
Very good. Tamara, how about you, the same question in terms of what's needed to really allow the bioeconomy to break through to the next level? Are your members looking at finance limitations, new technology bottlenecks where more research is needed? But what are there trade barriers that might be getting in the way when you think about moving into a global bioeconomy instead of just a U.S. or a North American bioeconomy?
Thank you for the question. I think what I'll focus on is it's all of that in different places because there's a diversity of membership that I represent. So the members have a bit of a diversity of needs similar to what James was talking about. But one thing I will call out is there are oftentimes overlooked simple things such as definitions. And when we establish programs, the definitions are not necessarily evergreen. They're not keeping up with the innovations that are coming out in terms of technology. And so as those innovations advance and science gets ahead of where the regulations are and where those definitions are, it creates bottlenecks in different programs on whether or not certain feedstocks or certain processes or certain ways of accounting for the impacts the bioeconomy and the circular bioeconomy can have are able to be brought to bear on what we are all looking to try and do. So I think as we look big, we also have to look small because some of those very simple definitional changes or whether or not a guidance allows for that diversity and that flexibility to keep up with those innovations, because oftentimes once we put it into a regulation or a guidance, it does not get updated as robustly and as much as it needs to be.
Okay, thank you. And Jean, we're going to give you the last word before we move to panel 2. If you as a farmer had a magic wand that you could wave that would eliminate the barriers to further scaling your circular system approach to farming, what would you eliminate? What would that wand take out?
I don't know if it would take out anything, but if I could wave that wand, I would want more research and more publicly funded research to bring us solutions for what products we need to provide. If we look at the case of soybeans, and for one, there's been a lot of talk about sustainable aviation fuel. When we talk about that, we also have to increase crush capacity. We have to increase production also. So the research to increase production is important. We also need to figure out what to do with the byproducts of that crush. And we as soybean growers, we have a soybean checkoff, which helps fund some of that research. But we need a public and private research to help bring those solutions to market. So that is what I would use my magic wand for.
Great, very good. Well, as David Jones pointed out, this is a transformation that involves the entire value chain. And we all have a role to play, but we have to do it together by co-creating, co-exploring, and moving to the next level. So thank you so much for your insights and perspectives, and we invite you to sit back now and listen to our next panel share their insights. Okay, now we're going to be segueing to our value chain partner portion of the conversation today, and I invite our panel members to please come up and join us. And we will continue right along. So Lloyd Day is with us from IECA. We have Grazi Parenti from Syngenta Crop Science. We have Ben Durham and a pre-recorded message that we're going to hear first. And I believe we have Andre Correra de Lago with us. Bruno, I'm sorry, Bruno. I've got an old script here, I believe. So these are our panel members, and I think what I'm going to do is just begin with Ben Durham's pre-recorded message that sets the stage for this portion of our program, and then we'll go into a conversation with our panel members. So if you could roll Ben's message.
Good afternoon from a warm South Africa, and hope progress is Good afternoon from a warm South Africa, and hope progress has been made at the COP29. Thanks to ICA and Hugo Chavaria for the invitation to participate in what I think is the most crucial issue in addressing climate change and biodiversity loss, the sustainable and circular bioeconomy that must change the way the world organizes production, manufacturing, business, the entire global economy. The climate crisis is affecting us all everywhere across the globe. We are not doing enough to keep ourselves within the 1.5 degree scenario. 2024 is the hottest on record. It's affecting the plant, microbe, and animal ecosystems and the planet's resilience. It's causing loss of human life and livelihoods. It is affecting our collective future. We need to move quickly in mitigating climate change before we pass too far the tipping point. We need to act now. South Africa this year approved the Climate Change Act. While our national bioeconomy strategy is 10 years old, this Climate Change Act is galvanizing a coordinated cross-government, cross-industry, and across civil society response as a way of not only adapting to climate change, but also seeking to mitigate our carbon-intensive economy's impact on the planet. Like much of the global south, our interests in the bioeconomy stem from the power of the technology to create jobs, improve livelihoods, create SMMEs, develop products relevant to South Africa. Continental Africa's economy is already bioeconomy based, but lacks processing capability, sophistication, and a critical mass. A large part of Africa's bioeconomy is based on the export of raw material. We need to ramp up this bioeconomy. We need to start working together across the globe to produce and valorize biomass. Africa, like much of the global south, has a wealth of biodiversity, arable land, and people. But support for the bioeconomy's development, which lifts people out of poverty, is all too limited and isolated. The world needs to come together and start acting collectively to rapidly ramp up bioeconomies, which create sustainable livelihoods, which produce sufficient biomass to replace not only the fossil fuels, but as the key source for many other foods, textiles, bioplastics, biomaterials, biopharmaceuticals. Remarkably, we have the technologies, we have the solutions, we have the opportunity. What we do not yet have is the collective mindset, the governance, and the will to address this global crisis. Holding the G20 presidency this coming year, South Africa is seeking to better identify the bioeconomy opportunity in the global south. Secondly, to unpack standards and metrics that can guide and incentivize trade in genuine bioeconomy goods. Thirdly, to look at the mechanisms to finance bioeconomy development. And lastly, to design instruments and platforms that can start implementing support. A critical first step is getting the global mindset right, linking the bioeconomy as a significant part of the solution to climate change, biodiversity loss, unsustainable development, and global equity. We need to move. I thank you.
Great. Well, that was a great setup message for our next round of discussion. And I think I introduced it as a value chain partner panel. And I include countries as value chain partners because we're all in this together. They can do so much to enable and incentivize. And we're going to be talking about that as we go forward. So let me do a quick round of introductions with our panel. First, no stranger to us here at the IECA booth, the home of sustainable agriculture, Mr. Lloyd Day, the Deputy Director General of IECA. He has a long-standing reputation of putting farmers at the center and working to forge partnerships to help scale up solutions from the land across the Americas and across the globe. So, Lloyd, welcome. Thank you, as busy as you are this week, for actually being part of a panel with us. So we're quite honored. Next up is Grazi Parenti. Grazi is the head of business sustainability for Syngenta Crop Protection. She also wears the title of head vice president of sustainability and corporate affairs for Brazil. We have been working together with Grazi over 4 or 5 COPs now, I think. So we're going back and demonstrating how long we've been at this journey, and it is a journey of really transforming. And the life science companies bring so much to the table here. It's wonderful that you're part of this conversation today, Grazi. And last but not least is Bruno Abure. Bruno is the Secretary for Climate and Environment in the Ministry of External Affairs in the country of Brazil. He's been working in sustainable development issues such as the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the leadership that Brazil has been providing in the G20 as a primary driver of transformational change has not gone unnoticed by any of us. So we're honored to have you and the country of Brazil be part of this conversation. So with that, let's go back and resume our fireside chat around ways to scale the bioeconomy. And Lloyd, I think I'll just start with you since you're right to my left. As you've been thinking about this within IECA, tell us why you think the bioeconomy path is so ripe for really developing a bigger movement and enabling agriculture in all of its component parts to be valued and recognized as a solution. What is special about this bioeconomy train that we're embarking upon?
Well, thanks a lot, Ernie. You know, the bioeconomy, as I think the last panel mentioned in other panels, is nothing new. I hearken back to my days at USDA when we were talking about an integrated farm, and that's essentially the circular bioeconomy. And that was just mentioned about how you grow your corn, the corn goes to ethanol, the DDGs go back to the cows produce the milk, the protein, and then you have the energy that comes from an anaerobic digester. And so you have a whole excellent example right there. So how do you move from that into other parts of the bioeconomy? How do you look at opportunities for a lot of different components? I live in Costa Rica right now, and so we've been working with the government of Costa Rica in a variety of areas, but Costa Rica is a country that grows a lot of fruits and coffee. And so coffee has a lot of residue as well. And so the country and the sector is trying to figure out what to do with that residue in a way, and they're investing in research, they're investing in strategies to take that residue and add potentially other elements in that to see if there can be some biofertilizers, bioinputs. I know Mohammed Ibrahim, who can't hear me right now because he doesn't have headphones on, was working on a project at CATIA to do exactly that. The Director General of CATIA is sitting right here, Luis Pocasangre. It's nice to have you here as well. But how do we take advantage of all elements of a crop and all elements of the residue of a crop in order to do different things? Bananas, for example, CATIA, they're taking the banana stalk and turning it into paper as well as to planks in the La Lola farm in that country. And so from an IECA perspective, we've been trying to look at this in terms of opportunity for this vast, 2 continents really, North and South America and Central America and the Caribbean combined. How do we help farmers and governments assemble the right policies? We were just talking about policies. Tamara was talking about it. James was talking about it. how do we have the right policies and definitions and enabling regulations so that governments, countries, the private sector can invest with knowledge in how to take advantage of the abundance of biomass that we have. The opportunity of ethanol is something that I know my colleagues from Brazil will talk about, but that's just one element. Biofuels has huge opportunity with SAF, as has been discussed in panels earlier this week, but how do we tie all that together in a way that can help give farmers more value? And what I like the most about investing in the bioeconomy, investing even in the biofuels component, is it's an investment in agriculture. It helps farmers be more productive and more efficient, and it helps in this world of this COP here, it helps demonstrate that agriculture is doing everything it can to use all elements of agriculture in order to contribute back to the planet, to leave organic fuel and organic components in the land so that our soils are stronger. So there's a great opportunity in the bioeconomy. We as an institute have invested heavily in it. Ben spoke about Hugo Chavarria. He's not here. He's been traveling a lot to Brazil lately at the G20, where they've done an excellent job with a bioeconomy document that is going to lead the way to South Africa, as he just said. And so I think you see a lot of momentum in this sector, and we're trying to help our governments and our member states understand how to structure that in a way that is useful for their countries, but also for the greater good in the greater continent.
So to sum up, maybe what was once old is now new. This is not new, as you pointed out, but there are opportunities to maybe rebrand it in a way that opens more eyes as we transition from fossil to bioeconomy and build a bigger coalition of support as we move forward. So thanks for those opening remarks, Lloyd. Grazie, let me go to you next. As a life science partner, you've been listening to farmers, to ranchers, to fishers across the world, not just in Brazil. I know you have responsibilities in Brazil, but you travel the globe at meetings like this and work with your partners in other parts of the country. What are they finding is needed most in the way of research and technologies to further scale and build upon what we've already done in the bioeconomy?
Thank you, Ernie, and what a fantastic question. So, first of all, we are talking about bioeconomy. There is a lot of, another of these words, if you ask like 10 people what's bioeconomy, we might have 10 different versions of what exactly is bioeconomy. So this is the first thing. I'm Brazilian, I'm based in Brazil, and for many people, when you ask about bioeconomy, they think about acai berry. We are talking about things from the forest, which is, of course, also bioeconomy, but it's not just that. So that's the first important piece of it. The second is we are talking about generally waste, and what is waste? Waste is I used the land, I used water, I used hours of someone working then, I used inputs, and it didn't make it. So waste is always something that it doesn't matter if you are a farmer or if you are in the value chain, you should target and try to minimize. But there are some processes that you cannot do it without leaving some waste, like when you were talking about coffee and other crops, but entirely in the value chain. So. And I have been seeing in Brazil, what I would like to share that's interesting, I'm seeing a lot of ranchers really trying to produce, when they have some structure, some biomethane in this camp. So they are investing in trying to have these biodigesters to create biomethane there for using in the trucks, in the machinery that they have in their farms. So this is happening today. So this is an important one. The second important piece is when I talk about making the most of the resources you use it's about technology. So having the right seed, having the right, like our farmer just shared, the right technology, and sometimes it doesn't need to be from NASA thing, It's about having something that can minimize the risks of the failure. So this is where Syngenta plays an important role in trying to provide from digital and inputs this opportunity. And last but not least, when we talk about circular bioeconomy is how we also work as a company to provide the policies for that. Because we are in the trade associations, we are interacting with the government, we are together with some institutions, like I see here, Silvia, from the president of Embrapa in Brazil. So how we are partner with the academy, with the science institutions for us to provide this for the farmer. And there is always an important thing to have in consideration. Farmers will do something because this will translate in a benefit, but they want to understand what is the benefit. So how we work in this, so we have practices, we have science, but how can we translate that to farmers in a way that they can benefit, that they can really see the value? And there is a lot of data on that. So what we have been working today, also using some methodologies of Embrapa, is to translate that. The better usage of technology, the better management you do in your practice, translate in yields, but translate in organic matter, translate in the carbon. So that's what we have been doing.
Great, thank you very much. Bruno, we've already heard of the great leadership that Brazil has been providing in really drawing more attention to the opportunity to scale the bioeconomy, not just as a climate solution, but to economic development, to biodiversity improvements and so forth across the SDGs. So based on what you've been doing here, what do you think are the biggest opportunities to advance circular bioeconomy enabling policies that can be scaled, policies and mechanisms that can be scaled? What's on the horizon that you're working on that might give us some insight to the springboard for further development?
Thank you, Ernie. Thank you, Aika, for inviting Brazil to participate. So we in Brazil are convinced that we need to accelerate our path towards a more sustainable economy. And we are firmly believe that the bioeconomy is one of those solutions. And in that spirit, this year, during our presidency of the G20, we created the G20 Initiative on Bioeconomy. And at the same time, in June, we launched the National Strategy for Bioeconomy on the domestic level. Because, of course, the international arena doesn't do it alone by itself, so we need to take what we learn from others and apply at home. So that's what we're trying to do. And over the course of this year, I think we have been very successful in approving the 10 high-level principles on bioeconomy. They were approved in September in Rio, but they are going to be officially adopted by the leaders at the G20 Leaders Summit next week on Monday and Tuesday. And the principles, going to your questions, they contain some features that are very exciting for us. So, for example, the first aspect is that it's the first ever multilaterally negotiated document specifically that touches specifically on bioeconomy, and they are also very wide-ranging and transversal, revealing the very intersectoral nature of the bioeconomy. So there's something there for basically everyone. So we talk about science and technology, we talk about sustainable development and even gender equality and the necessity of creating ecosystems for innovation. We see bioeconomy as the encounter between modern science and traditional knowledge. So that's something, because in a way they're both advanced knowledge and advanced science. So we wanted to put both of them on equal footing, and that's something that we managed to do in the principles. So we ended up with a set of principles that I think almost all the countries can see themselves in. So, and I don't think that we reached that result by accident or by mistake. One of the reasons is that the forum that was chosen to develop this work, the G20, of course, it's the biggest economies, and we are 80% of the GDP and 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions. But at the same time, if you think about it, the members of the G20, they are very different among themselves. They're different in terms of population, in terms of economic profile, in terms of the biodiversity that they have. And going back to Grazielli, when she mentioned that if you ask 10 people what the concept of bioeconomy is, you will get 10 different answers. And if you ask 10 different people from 10 different countries, or 20 in this case, it's even more baffling. And this is why we wanted to make sure that we had a wide set of approaches to bioeconomy, and even some delegations were very keen on the idea that we should refer to bioeconomies instead of the bioeconomy. And so in the end, the group and the amount of inputs from different sources that we had was very, I think, very rich. And the second aspect I think that also helped was that the initiative was structured around 3 axes. So one of the axes was the bioeconomy, science, technology, and innovation for the bioeconomy. And that's where we discussed not only modern science, but also traditional knowledge. The second axis was the sustainable use of biodiversity for the bioeconomy. And the third one was the bioeconomy as a driver for sustainable development, because we couldn't foresee or document or even a concept of bioeconomy where we would reproduce the model that have led us to here. So a situation of environmental degradation and widening inequalities. So these 2 features, so the group where the work was done and the way that the work was approached, I think the combination of the 2 led us to a document that is wide enough to include the production of biofuels, but also small-scale farmers and also biomedicine and biofertilizers, etc. But of course, G20 doesn't encompass everyone, and what we wanted the initiative to be was a first step, an institutional initial step to make sure that the bioeconomy continues to be a part of the conversations in conversations like this, because we wanted to ensure that as it develops in a way that is more sustainable and, like I said, doesn't reproduce some of the failures that we have seen up until now. And forums like these are very important, but also what Ben has said, his idea of South Africa's idea to continue the work on bioeconomy, and specifically the idea on financing the bioeconomy, and also on indicators and metrics. That work is very, I think, diplomatically challenging, but also so important, because without it, it would be very hard for the bioeconomy to really develop, and without common standards to make sure of what a sustainable bioeconomy looks like or not. And we're looking forward to the work that South Africa is going to do, and we are also very interested in taking the topic to Belém next year as host of COP30. We are very excited about what we can do with the bioeconomy, not only in the climate, not only in the action agenda, but also in the proper UNFCCC negotiation trail. And I think so South Africa and us in Brazil and many ICA and other partners, I think that there's a lot of institutional momentum towards the development of bioeconomy becoming more mainstream. Thank you.
Bruno, thank you very much, and congratulations for the leadership that Brazil, South Africa have been providing. This is so important because without that leadership, we could just be spinning our wheels. So thank you. So Lloyd, Bruno mentioned that the range of opportunities to participate in the bioeconomy range from large-scale production platforms that are used to produce things like biofuels to smaller scale operations, maybe like Lois Wright-Morton's smallholder example that she brought forward here, where there could be a benefit for developing and spinning off SMEs that can stimulate local economic development, improve quality of lives. How do you see that playing out in the Americas? Because I'm anticipating, not that we've seen this movie before, but I'm anticipating that others that would oppose the emergence of the bioeconomy are beginning pointing their fingers at us, saying, "Wait a minute, there's a downside of this. How do we protect and ensure that we're not degrading the environment?" So is this a way to demonstrate the wide breadth of it and give us more opportunities to demonstrate how we're improving quality of lives across the entire landscape?
Yeah, I think we're at the tip of the iceberg right now in terms of what is the potential of the bioeconomy. Because heretofore, we've been growing crops for food. You mentioned, that we've been tinkering with food since the beginning of time, since the beginning of the Neolithic times. Agriculture has been essentially the intentional modification of plants and animals for human consumption. But now we have the opportunity for that intentional modification of residue, of parts of the plant to do a lot of other things that we haven't done before. And so it's really exciting. And I think it's a question of awareness, and it's a question of building awareness and then communication. We talked about communication and biotechnology and how we actually haven't done a very good job of that, especially on the transgenic side. The industry is trying to do a better job on the gene editing side, and there's for like CRISPR-Con, for instance, which sounds kind of nerdy, like Comic-Con or something like that, but they're trying to help consumers understand the benefits of technology before it gets out of hand and there's rejection. I think in terms of the bioeconomy, there's lots of different niche applications that are happening, and you hear about something new every day, right? That might come from the Amazon, that is a cosmetic, element. When I was preparing for a bioeconomy discussion, I think at the Borlaug Dialogue, there was a group that came to our headquarters in Costa Rica around the announcement of a political policy that the government was announcing. And so they had stands of all the different products, and I went up to one. It's like, well, I need a story. Give me something to talk about. And they handed me something, which I didn't take on a plane because I don't know what might happen in an airport. But it was like some miracle cosmetic thing. So there's going to be a lot of sales elements, but something might catch fire and become a very popular product. But what we're trying to do at ICA related to the bioeconomy and all elements of the bioeconomy, from biofuels to biotech to bio inputs, is try to have data, try to have information. We're trying to build awareness through seminars, through dialogues, through documents. We're then doing the capacity building around that. So bio-enterprises and governments have the requisite knowledge in order to embrace this and to form the regulations. And then comes the policy and regulatory framework. How do we ensure that bio-inputs are going to be available in the marketplace? How are we going to enable the combination of bio-inputs with synthetics to have synthetic biology, which really is probably where we're going to get the ability to scale and have consistency that might actually relate to having greener pesticides and crop protection, which is very exciting. How do we then develop the bioenterprises and bio-businesses? And we're actually engaged in competitions and fairs and things like that, in order to help, project and stimulate this program. And then a lot of it is the positioning and networking that Hugo has done with Bruno and with Grazi and with lots of other people on these panels before that has, made the bioeconomy part of the discussion in Latin America, which it hasn't been before. And biofuels is, of course, a huge component of it, and Agustin is our leader in that. But it's how do we combine all of it in a way that is going to give a kind of certainty to both governments and consumers that this is a good thing that's going to help the economic development and for a whole economy, but not just for the farmers.
Well, that range of outputs of solutions we can deliver through the bioeconomy, I think eventually is going to really break through and people are going to get it, because right now we know we're falling behind in most of our SDGs, and it's really about quality of life. And if we can show and demonstrate how the circular bioeconomy is going to improve quality of life across the SDGs, I think that's going to be the eye-opener. I mean, we understand it, but the others that haven't gotten their heads around this yet, once they start to realize that agriculture is not just a producer of food, we're producers of all of these quality of lives, and the bioeconomy is the engine that drives it. That's what's going to break us through. So that's the good news. But Bruno pointed out that we're going to have to be able to document the sustainability outputs, and it's hard. And ICA's working on it, others are working on it. Grazi, what's the private sector doing, helping farmers with decision support tools and data management tools that will enable them to make better decisions for themselves first, and be able to demonstrate with confidence in the marketplace that the product that they're providing is delivering these outcomes? Where does data management and all of that enter into this, and what's Syngenta doing to help us with that?
Well, this is exactly the challenge of the agriculture today. Most of you might know that in the last 40 years, Brazil has really advanced in modernizing and in growing its agricultural production. But we have done this with technology and blah, 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 blah. But what is the next 40 years? And the next 40 years is exactly what you said, Ernie, to measure the impact of the things. How we have a narrative. We are always saying, well, we have the most sustainable production, we have this and we have that, a very strict environmental legislation. And then we have the energy in Brazil is mostly renewable energy. But how we translate that for people to really believe that we are doing the right thing for the soil. So this is where Syngenta plays. So from digital tools where the farmer can start from managing the farm, start with the forecasting of like weather, using of necessary inputs, pesticides, biologicals, biostimulants. So to use the best of it to make it happen. The other thing that it's important to say is that there, as you mentioned, the SDG goals, and I always remember the 17, which is partnership. So all of us have the same challenges, but we have different ways to address the challenges. And it's about a lot of cooperation. So we don't pretend, we don't intend to be, the only ones knowing this thing. So we do a lot of partnerships with NGOs, with institutions. So this is another way to do that. And sometimes even with competitors. How we are able to support the academy to drive knowledge on that. And also, when you talk about, the development in this, so the farmers normally are far away. They are not in the city. And when you stimulate this new frontier, and not just, as you said, biofuels, which is more like easy to get, but this other uses of the bio outcomes of the agricultural production, you are able to develop locally new industries or new business that can benefit from that, and you are generating new development. We have an index that we can measure social and economic development in the cities, EDH, that we call. And then that when the cities that have larger agricultural production, they have a higher level of development. So when people say that agriculture is just the farmers that benefit from it, it's a lie. So you are benefiting a whole branch. of a whole array of people. But what we are seeing now, for instance, is like hubs for collecting waste and then produce energy, hubs of development, cooperatives. So you are bringing development to the ground, to the closer to the farms. Thank you.
So, Grazi, you really helped us get to maybe the last question of the day, since we're getting close to time, but you talked about SDG 17 partnerships. This is an example of partnerships. Co-development, co-creation, working hard. And my organization, Solutions on the Land, has been preaching that since we were formed, because we've observed that sometimes, often, we're too government-centric. We're chasing somebody's solution that's convinced it's going to work, but once it gets to the ground level, to the farm level, the real world emerges, and it may or may not. So Bruno, maybe this is the question to you. You talked about the importance of traditional knowledge to inform decision making, and that's where farmers come in. So how do you envision farmers, or perhaps farm organizations, participating in this exciting expansion of the bioeconomy? How can farmers have a seat at the table when the stakeholders involved in the bioeconomy come together to work to create this next plateau of a renaissance of agriculture? Because I know we would like to be there. Farmers want to be there. How can we do that?
Sure. I think what you mentioned is that sometimes governments are very government-centric, and we tend to forget that even though we create in multilateral fora, we create the frameworks and the guides and the norms and guidelines. It's businesses and people and organizations and communities that on the ground, that's where change is produced. So we're very aware of that. And one of the principles in the high-level principles relates exactly to that, to international cooperation. And we would strongly favor this possibility of capacity building and financing projects that have worked by farmers or even by companies as well. But the ability to take experiences that have gone successfully in one place and make sure that there's an opportunity for other farmers to take advantage of them and learn. And one idea that we have and that could be explored is some sort of platform for collaboration where you have states, governments, countries, but also individual people, farmers and companies that have projects that they want to fund, or even that model projects that they can share. And we see a future that is based on collaboration in this field. That's what we see.
That's wonderful to hear. And I've been around long enough to have seen other new initiatives come forward, and some of them succeeded, some haven't. But over 10 years ago, when we started to talk about agriculture's role as a climate solution, there was the notion that what if we got the entire value chain and government agencies and academia and farmer groups together to work on climate smart agriculture? Could we be better if we work together? And the Global Alliance of Climate Smart Agriculture was created and spawned discussions and conversations and knowledge sharing across the world through both GACSA and regional platforms that were set up. So that might be, a model for a GACSA 2.0 that enables us not just to be convening under a government-centric umbrella, but a shared leadership platform where academia, where the value chain investments, with the farmer organizations, the conservation groups can come together and co-create to get to a better future. So to our panel members, thank you very much. Before I turn it to our rapporteur, Lloyd, you've been our host, our champion, the home of sustainable agriculture that always puts farmers at the center of discussions and decisions. Closing thoughts from your perspective as our core host.
Well, thanks, Ernie. And thank you for your partnership. And thanks to everyone out here. You know, as Bruno was talking, I was thinking, you know, here at the COP, it's been really a journey. And it's a journey that started with the UN Food Systems Summit. It's a journey that started when we started working on MRLs in 2019 and bringing the Americas at a ministerial level together, but also learning from the private sector. And then we went to the Food Systems Summit with a message to them, 16 messages from the Americas, from north to south, saying, make sure that farmers are part of these negotiations and that they're respected and that they're listened to, because they weren't. Second, that science, not political science, needs to be the foundation of public policy. And the third is that agriculture needs to be viewed as part of the solution. And then from that, we said, what's next? We've maybe stopped the narrative for a bit, thanks to the good work of Brazil, as well as the United States and other member countries, 34 member countries that came together. What's next? And we said, well, let's go to the COP. We've been at the COP, you know, doing the negotiations, which are very important. Katia Fajardo has been our lead in that for many years and did a great job this morning talking about that. But it was, what can we do in a bigger way, maybe, to host this pavilion, the Home of Sustainable Agriculture of the Americas, sponsored by everyone here, you know, in the audience, from north to south, different industries, from livestock to fruits and vegetables to the crop protection and the scientific industry. I mean, this has been a huge success for us. We too were very much government-centric, ministerial, ag ministry-centric institution, but we've opened up as well to the entire private sector in the value chain. From, we had Pepsi-Cola here yesterday. I can't say PepsiCo. They always want me to say PepsiCo. It's Pepsi. But we had everyone here from small producers to large multinational companies working together to demonstrate that agriculture is part of the solution, and it's a solution for the land, which you guys are part of. I see, you know, the former Secretary of California, my old friend, Eiji Kawamura here, and there's a whole host of people involved in this, and we're just so grateful for the partnership and leadership with all of you, in particular you, Ernie, and your team.
Well, thank you very much. And this is that opportunity to really pivot from problems from the land to solutions from the land. And we all are part of that. And together we'll get there. So with that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to our rapporteur, Margaret Ziegler, with IECA for closing comments.
Thank you so much, Ernie. You're always a great partner with us. We love working with you and your whole team. So I think I'm just going to make it very brief because we've heard a lot of rich discussion. I'm just going to try to focus on just a few things that are going to get us from Baku to Belém. That's what we're trying to do at the end of all of these dialogues for climate action. We're trying to come up with just a few takeaways for us to really focus us between now and Belém. We only have about 10 months, really, by the time we get there. So just some things I heard today that we really need to carry forth as we try to make a difference and to promote the bioeconomy and circular bioeconomy as part of the climate solution. The change in the mindset. I kept hearing this over and over from both panels up here. And I would say that maybe our own mindsets, we have to be open to being changed. We think we understand what the bioeconomy is, but I would say there's probably a lot of things that we can do that even those of us here that know about the bioeconomy don't even know about yet. There's so many possibilities out there. So we have to be really open ourselves as a community. I think we also, in part of that mindset, is to make sure that we are really going to be thinking about pre-competitive actions. That's the best way to get things done. Graziel mentioned this. How can we be, in the next 10 months, thinking about the best way to leverage all of our power, our knowledge, our capacity to really come to Belém with some real solutions to offer. Can we think more about north-south advocacy for research investments? You know, we have Embrapa here. I just saw Sylvia. She was here. She's going to be on a panel shortly. So what can we do to connect the major research institutes or connect them as part of an advocacy strategy? Can ICA be a bridge in this? I know that we've been talking a lot about connecting bioeconomy networks from the South, from Latin America, from Africa, and even from North America, trying to bring the networks together And maybe ECA can be a hub for that type of activity. Hopefully we can do something like that in an initial meeting in the first quarter of next year. Thank you again to Brazil for this great leadership. I love the principles from the G20 document that you've mentioned. I love this connecting modern science with traditional knowledge. This is what's, I think, going to help people embrace the circular bioeconomy, because we need people to embrace it, understand it, and embrace it, and incorporate it into the 2030 goals and into the climate change plans for our countries. So again, I'm gonna leave it at that. I think we can be in touch after this through Ernie, through Ika, through Bruno, and through Ben, who we heard from, and Hugo, of course, is a great connector of all of us. Hugo Chavarria at ICA. So we're going to, I think, carry this forward in 10 months together in Belém. Let's see what we can do together. Thank you again, everybody, for coming. We have another panel, and I want to also invite all of you to a happy hour that will be taking place here tonight. Starting around 5:30, we're going to have drinks, just to network, have fun together before tomorrow. We're off a bit, but come and just relax and network with everyone here. Thank you.